CSUSB transcripts. CSUSB transcripts. Cal State University, San Bernardino. Let's check this out. Hair's a little crazy today. All right. We'll try to do some quick ones. We have pause web for students. Break font size 3 if you're unable to access any portion of this. A little, what is that, HTML at the top. Written communication, 4.5 units earned, 1 course taken. English 101, 4.5. AP, I don't even know, English Lit. Oral communication, 4 units earned. Let me talk about the classes I remember. So this is June 4th, 2007. Not necessarily when I attended, this is when I decided to print it out. And I kept it in all my little papers that I seemed to have been accumulating all my life. So when I decided to make this review of my life, end of 2017, and it turned into leaving real estate, getting back to my writing roots, and then now, you know, really questioning what I believe and whether I can stand by those beliefs. I had all this stuff I was carrying around, my military paperwork, which I knew I wanted to speak on eventually, and then I had this. So I printed this out in 2007, so carrying it around for like 10 years or so. Why was I carrying this around? I guess it's a record of like what I did in Cal State San Bernardino. So the writing classes, I was doing creative writing, but I wasn't really attached to it. And then the oral communication, that was like a speech class. The guy told me, he was like, you know, you're a little bit more advanced than our average student. I just talking normally, but I guess talking normally in front of the class, some of those people, I don't know. It's funny, as I get older, I get more embarrassed talking in front of people. When I was younger, I was a ham, and I could just like, I didn't mind so much. And now I just do what I'm supposed to do. Well, that's not true. It depends on the situation. I don't like speaking if I don't feel like I have something to say. But if I have something to say, I'll say it. So I try to speak up when I feel like it's appropriate. Oral communication was just basically a speech class. I was in speech and debate, so I knew the normal stuff. Speech and debate is something you do in high school where you take these speech classes and you can do like impromptu was my thing. Speak about a topic for 5-8 minutes. Maybe it was 3 to 5 minutes. Critical thinking. I think I've always been good at critical thinking. But a lot of these I just wasn't doing the work. I'll go for a little bit and then I'll just quit. And you'll see that later on in the grades. Natural sciences, mathematics, quantitative reasoning. I was good at math since I was a kid. I just didn't really like it. It would bore me, or I never really applied myself to it. So AP statistics, that was a high school class. I took a lot of AP classes in high school. They were the better classes. Still didn't do the work, but it was at least more interesting than the normal classes. So I did AP stats. I think I got a 4 on the AP test. I always got 4s or 5s on the AP test, which is enough to get the college credit. So this shows you how my bouncing around in life, I was still only 1.5 years, 2 years out from getting a degree, even with all of this, because I had about a year and a half college credit from the AP classes, from high school classes, which translate to college credit. And then I had, so if I cared about college, I could have probably gotten a degree in 2 years out of high school. I probably could have had a 4-year degree by the time I was 20 if I had done some summer stuff and really just jumped right into it. I would run in these directions, but a rule of thumb since I was young was it has to inspire me. So yeah, if I didn't find, and then also as a young as a young person who is looking for guidance in the world, I'm reading this book right now called The Authoritarians, and I'm recognizing a lot of how I was raised as a conservative Christian in the book. And I'm recognizing a lot of the limitations on my ability to communicate with my parents. Living with my parents at this little house in Ontario it's interesting because it's a tiny house. We're on top of each other basically. I do these videos when they're gone at their little insurance agency. They've given me, my parents have never failed me in their love and support. We'll get into issues, and you know, like I threatened to throw my dad out of the family. They threatened to disown me constantly because that's what type of parent. Not in a bad way, but I mean, like when we get arguments and heated, we get into arguments and we get heated, but we always come back to love, and they've never failed to, when it comes down to it, support me. And I have always told them that as soon as I can, I'll retire them. So our family, and I think that's the best families, for all of our fighting, for all of our disagreements, and for all of my quirkiness over life, we defend each other before anyone else. You know, we can attack each other, but no one else has a right to attack us. And they are, yeah, we're very loyal. But that being said, so being here, listening to, they both voted for Trump, Donald Trump, who's a president, if you haven't heard, in 2018. So I don't vote, so what can I say? I've never really felt like this system was, I always felt like it was kind of fixed, still do. That's why I want to get involved in it, to unfix it. That doesn't sound right. To fix it, I always felt like the system was a con, and I would like to help repair it. And I'm reading this book, The Authoritarians, and this guy has some interesting insights as a psychologist on why people believe what they believe beyond reason or rationality. Specifically, evangelicists and conservatives, and how they exhibit a lot of authoritarian mind states, and then how authoritarians take advantage of that. How the far right has. He's pretty much focusing on the right side of the political spectrum. I have a lot of personal experience with the left side as well. When I was in Occupy Wall Street, we weren't attacked by the authoritarian right. We had the guys in the Guy Fawkes mask, and the authoritarian right attacked us on the media, but it was the authoritarian left that really undermined that movement from the inside out. So that needs to be spoken on. But why did I bring that up? I'm reading this book. I'm living with my folks because I'm doing these videos from their house, and AP classes. I wanted to speak about the book, I guess. No, I had a point. It's okay. You don't retrieve them all. Basically, well, I mean, I think that book's interesting, and I would, well, I mean, I guess they've always supported me. I've never felt like I had to be one way. They tell me I have to be one way. Definitely, they try to shape my life. But when I would turn from that path, they wouldn't like disown me. When it comes down to it, we're still a family. So that takes the pressure off in life for me to make my own way. Yeah, so these are showing some classes I took, AP classes, other college credit. Oh, I guess I was talking about how I could have finished college really fast if I wanted to, but I've always kind of looked for my own intuition and impulse, kind of like, what should I be doing? Just as important as what other people tell me I should be doing. But I also give them credit. I tried to help them in their insurance agency whenever I can. I told them after I do this artistic project, if the money doesn't come in, I'll help them with the insurance agency again some. But let's see, intro to physical geography, physical science. Let's look at other stuff in here. Multicultural gender requirement. I needed to meet the multicultural gender requirement. That's great. Right? So college education and the authoritarian left. That'd be fun to discuss. Are our universities uh, promoting independent thought, or are they, do they have agendas? I believe in opening up the narrative of Western civilization to other cultures and other inputs, but we want to respect the autonomy and freedom of the individual, right? There's this thing I find in college, and I find on the authoritarian left, that they would like to correct the individual too much, and I feel like we want to broaden people's options and horizons and open up their possibilities and their ways of looking at things, but how much of that should be prescriptive, where we're prescribing things, and how much of that should be suggestive, where you give people options, but to be heavy-handed will defeat the purpose in a way. Um, I feel like a lot of times, and I got the sense in college, is that we were just aiming for the right answer instead of free-thinking individuals. A story I wanted to bring up in college, just how anti-authoritarian I am. What turned me off to college? So I have this one teacher, beginning of the 20th century literature, so this is like 19th century literature maybe, early 20th century literature. There's a time period. It seems like that's how you break down the Western canon, so this is like 1900s to 1920s, 30s. After class, I go and I try to talk to her, and she's a lady like, maybe like late 20s, early 30s. So she's not that much older than me. Kind of cute too. And but I'm not at that level to hit on my teachers yet. Although my poetry teacher, I think we had a vibe, but definitely out of my league to do something like that. But I stopped to talk to her just to be like, what I was reading a lot, and when I would go to these classes, I wouldn't be doing their homework or even reading their textbooks, but I'd be bringing my own books and just sitting in class and reading my own books. And she, I told her, oh, you know what, I think this is where we went wrong. I was just giving her my version of history. I was saying, you know what, I think the eugenics and the pseudoscience coming out of the early 20th century is what led to Hitler and his view of, his twisted view of race, which led to like the Holocaust. And so I was just, from reading what I was reading about systems and bureaucracies getting in the way of science, like when you look at world history and you're like, this has a progression scientifically from the Enlightenment to now, so where did we fall off? I noticed early 20th century in our popular culture, there's some really funny ideas that had social currency. One of them was eugenics. So while we're reading the literature about, and this is the age of imperialism too, so I'm noticing that too. There's imperialism, there's conquest, there's Rudyard Kipling's, I think we read the Take Up the White Man's Burden. Like, how can people be so ignorant? And then I'm realizing, oh, the science of the time was pretty ignorant too. Try to bring that up to the teacher. So like, she just kind of tries to talk me back to the curriculum, like just read the stuff and do the stuff. And I just have always had a sense, that's why when you're good at sales, you have to know when people are kind of like bullshitting you. It's like she didn't really care. So like, no one's really ever told me no in sales. They just kind of stop talking to you, or there's a feeling. Also in romance too, you get to know when people are into you when they're not, but you don't really, like, do you like me, check this box, yes or no? That's like elementary school stuff. But in the real world, you just like, there's a smile, there's a nod, there's a vibe, and all of a sudden before you know it. That's the best way. It's unspoken is the best way, I think, to have a romantic connection. And then, so the connection, not romantically, but between me and this teacher, was like, just get back to the fucking textbook and stop bugging me. This is like the class is over. And that was one teacher. Second example. And then there's that one teacher I mentioned before I liked. He published a book, a memoir. His publisher, it was between his book and A Million Little Pieces. They were both recovery books about addiction. They picked his book, and they're very glad they did, because A Million Little Pieces guy apparently was lying about all this shit. So Cal State San Bernardino had really good writers, and they had teachers who were doing stuff. And I think they're also good at business. He was a good one. English teacher was a bad one. And then there was a poetry teacher, B.F. Fairchild. He probably won't remember this. I was in his class once, and then I dropped out maybe 3 or 4 times. But in his first class, he says, you know what, usually we teach by the Socratic method, which is how they teach in law school, where through questions, we further your understanding by making you defend your belief. So through the act of the teacher questioning and making you defend your belief, your interpretation of the poem, you're going to you're better understand it. But he opens up his first class by saying, I used to teach by the Socratic method, but students find that that's too abrasive and confrontational, so we're not going to do that. And in my mind, I'm like, why the fuck are you going to bring it up then? You're basically saying that I used to use, which I thought was fascinating. I know that method, and I thought about going to law school, so I understand developing critical thinking skills through inquiry and through having the teacher act as the skeptic in order to force you to defend your beliefs. What am I doing this year if not forcing myself to? All of these videos, everything I do, I go and then watch and see if I can actually defend those beliefs. So he basically says, I used to have a standard which our modern college culture doesn't allow me to teach to because you guys are too soft. It was a subtle dig. And it was like intellectual's way to insult you. He didn't mean it personally, I don't think. He was venting a little bit, but I took it as an insult. So that guy, like, after I asked him, I stayed a couple classes. I really loved how he read. I bought his poetry book. I love how he writes. He's a legit poet, and I love his imagery. His poetry book is Occult Memory Systems of the Lower Midwest, and he had some poems in there that stayed with me, and he showed me what the standard is for a professional poet. But personally, as a teacher, he was a professor emeritus, semi-retired anyways. He was kind of like disappointed in the culture and why he couldn't. So from that little exchange, I can tell that he'd been given shit for being too hard on his students because the culture had changed and college students were asked to be babied more. And he was not in agreement with that. And so what I didn't like is it wasn't the character that I would agree with. It's like you either do what you feel is principled and teach the way that you want and then take the shit and take the grief, or you shut the fuck up and then you do it the soft way. But this whole middle, where like, I'm going to do it the soft way, but let me just tell you guys, it put a bad taste in my mouth. It made me feel like you didn't respect us. That's the reason why I stopped going to a class. If I get that type of vibe, that's how sensitive I am. That's like, is that good? Is that bad? I've avoided a lot of bullshit in my life. As soon as I kind of get the vibe or the feeling that I don't like a culture, or I skip out. That's in real estate. I got my license at this one company. I answered the first ad, came to New York and said, that's it, I'm either doing real estate or stocks, but I'm going to get some money. I just did Occupy Wall Street. My family's lost their house. I can't afford to be an activist anymore. I need to go make some fucking money. I answered the first ad was a real estate ad. These guys sponsored me. I went to school on my own money. I sold my dad's guitar, $500, $600. That paid for my real estate school, and for living while I did that, I also was working at a bar at the time as a bar back. And then my first couple commissions got the ball rolling, and then since then I was self-sufficient in real estate. So really bootstrapped the real estate industry, the career myself. But the company that sponsored me, I didn't work a day in that company. I went to Bond, New York, and those are where I got my first commissions, because the company that sponsored me looked like a chop shop. I had that feeling, but I was like, I'm going to get this license and see. So when it was time to take the real estate license, I went into their office just to check out the feel for the place. I'm 30 at the time. And so I don't have my license yet. I'm about to take the test, but I just told them I want to stop by and just hang out, see what it's like. And I just, the boss of the office said a off-color joke. One of the employees, one of the guys in the office, didn't respond. He was just quiet. Everyone was quiet. And the boss tried to play it off with another joke, a softer joke. And he was like, oh, whatever. And then went into his office. And then I could sense a vibe that no one liked the boss, and they just tolerated him. And then everyone was kind of sitting on their thumbs, too. No phone calls coming in, no one on the phones. Everyone just wasting their time on computers. I've been in enough sales environments to know, I don't even have to know what your sales process is or how you're selling. I know when people are productive and when they're not productive. There's an office full of not productive people. In my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to learn anything here. These guys aren't making money, basically. And then I went Bond, New York. It was on Mercer Street. They since have moved, but it used to be 300 Mercer, 250 Mercer, right off of NYU, right above Houston in Manhattan. Walk in there, and I saw some guys outside that office. They're smoking, they're talking. You know, I don't know if they're making money, but they're at least talking about deals. I walk in, it's like a stock exchange floor. People are moving, there's paperwork moving, people are on the phone. Not everyone in the office has to be doing money, but you want to know that there's that guy in the corner just always on the phone talking. Like, that guy might be bullshitting too, but like there was the hub of sales activity going on. And then I go all the way to the back room where the boss is, and I asked him if I can put my license over here, and sat down with him, talked to him a little bit, and he said yeah. And we had a good connection, and since then I worked for him for a couple months until I went to bounced around companies until I created my own company. That guy in the back room was presentable, very clean cut, clean shaven. Not only that, he was wearing a three-piece suit, which later on I found that he shops at Barney's. So I know this guy's making money. This guy's making at least $200,000, $300,000 a year. He's shopping at very high scale stores. He's looking like it. He's looking like money. He's only saying sir, madam to every single client. I'm not that professional, but he was the standard. Is if you're going to be trained by someone, you might as well be trained by someone who's the gold standard in your industry. And I've never met someone as professional as that guy in that office. And that's why I knew it was a safe place for me to come in and learn the industry. So it's done me well in life to go with my intuition if I don't like the culture, if I don't like the vibe of something. So in college, that was a good little rant out of these transcripts. In college, I was getting bad culture, bad vibe. So I'm in this, one more story. I'm in this other literature class now, that terrible, just like in the sales class where like I can tell, just like in that sales room where I can tell that no one's making money, in these classes I can tell no one's learning. It's the same vibe. I'm like, no one's paying attention, everyone's going through the motions. And I'm that college kid who's like, we're paying for this shit. Like, I took the money just to buy the laptop and fuck around with it and feel what it's like to have money in my pocket without actually having to save $10,000. But I did feel like the meter was running, like we're paying for this stuff. And so when I'm looking around and people are just dicking off, I'm like, this isn't my type of people. I'm gonna be stupider for being in this environment. I always wanted to be growing, and so if I felt like I wasn't growing, I definitely would skip out on stuff. So I'm in this class, I have I think it was like a CIA book, William Blum, The History of the CIA Intervention Since World War II. It goes through every single country that the CIA has manipulated or intervened in or interfered with their elections. He's a really great, or it might have been McAvoy or someone, but these guys, they put it together, like the history, which isn't in the news, but it's all very well cited with historic records. It's like a Noam Chomsky type thing. Like Noam Chomsky uses these guys as his sources. So I'm in there reading these heavy ass books, and I'm still responding, and I'm still talking to the teacher, and we're talking about was it C.S. Lewis, I think? No, not C.S. Lewis. The guy who did the Alice in Wonderland and the Jabberwocky poem. Let me look it up real quick. Jabberwocky. And that's a great poem. I'd heard about that poem before. I know enough and love enough of Lewis Carroll, the guy who did Alice in Wonderland, know enough about poetry to have run across that before, and the language, and he's inventing language and verbs and nouns, and it's so playful. So she says something, no one's answering, and so in my half attention span, I finally like answer her question, like blah 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 blah. And she's like, yeah, something, and we have a little banter back and forth. And she was like, what is your she tries to ask for my name, and I'm just like kind of smiling because I don't feel like a part of the culture anyways. I'm just in the back of the room reading my book, and so I'm just like, you already took roll, I don't have to give you my name. And she said, and everyone just kind of laughs. She's like, what? And I'm like, you already counted me as part of the attendance. Basically, like, I know you would want my name, but I don't really have to. I don't speak up in class. This is like we're a couple weeks into the class. She doesn't know who I am. She'll find out. And also in my mind, I was already thinking about not coming back. I would just stop. That's why these grades are like this, because I would just stop going to the courses. What's one that obviously, I could probably find that one. What's one where I failed? I had the burned, that's why I do real estate, I guess. I have this scorched earth approach, burning bridges. So if I was going to here he goes a D, comparative government. That's one that I stopped going to. What else? Scorched earth approach. I just stopped going, and I'm like, well, you know what? That way I don't go back, because I know myself. I always go back I peek into that door, I go and run in a different direction. I'll be like, wait, maybe I should have not done that, and then I'll go back. And so like, not by burning it into the ground, I couldn't. Maybe it was English 301B. That's a D, so that one I probably stopped going to. English 323 is an F, so that's probably one I stopped going to. What else? English 318 was an A, so I finished at least one English course. And then all the AP classes, yeah. History, English, history, psychology, economics, political science, and then all the DLI courses, and that's on page 507. But yeah, my overall GPA is 1.584. And then this is also like, I would hear people talk about, well, real quick, just to finish that up. So the teacher's like, she was so shocked at my insubordination, and I was being so playful with it. I was like, you'll find out tomorrow. You already took roll. And then so she starts going through the roll. She's like, I'll go through this again. And she starts calling out roll again. But now you're stopping the course just to prove a point. And now we're all looking at you, and people are just giggling, and she's realizing that she's losing control of the class. And she, and we're just like, kind of like just going back and forth. But, and then but when you're in institutions of authority and no one's questioned that authority, it's very shocking when someone does. And some people like me love to do that, and just to show people that this isn't as serious as it is. I'm pretty sure I use that as an excuse to never go back, because I was like, fuck it, you know. I think that's like a good way to walk out. I love walking out on a interesting note. When I quit my job in the East Bay Express with a beer in my hand on a Friday when they buy us pizza and beer, and just be like, I'm out of here. I just gave all my leads to the worst sales guy. Good luck tearing him out of his claws, because I know you're about to fire that guy, and I'm out. At will termination. You guys fired the journalistic staff because you just got a corporate takeover, so this is a little bit of comeuppance. But yeah, so I guess this is the same way, just poking your finger into the eye of authority. But there's this guy who did that in the military. He was getting upbraided by the chain of command. He had done something where he got in trouble. He didn't feel it was justified. There was that captain I didn't like, the commander of our company, and I'm in the hallways because instead of being in class, I've been taken out of class. I've been disenrolled now, so now I'm just waiting to get chaptered out of the Army, but that takes 6 to 8 months. So I'm helping up in the supply room, in the barracks, and this guy's in the barracks getting yelled at by our chain of command. And I walk by the room where it's our company commander, the captain, and our company first sergeant. So this is like our non-commissioned officers and our officers. And this dude who's just a regular PV1 or 2 like me is saying, you guys think you're fucking all that just because you have the fucking pieces of metal on your collar, and fuck you guys. And, you know, he was just tearing into them. And I was like, wow, this is like, you forget that these are normal human beings. And when they're wrong, they're still wrong. But we're indoctrinated to feel so much respect and feel like they're so vested with so much authority since basic training. They just really break you down to like worship and respect these guys, which is great. And it's great for cohesion of the unit and esprit de corps and all the terms that they use. But when they're wrong, they're wrong. And this guy felt like they had wronged him. And he just tore them down like you would any other asshole who had wronged you. And he put them in their place. For that outburst, he got put in jail. Because in the military, you're not allowed to speak like that to your commander. So people heard about it. And then they're like, what happened to that guy? I don't know if he went to Fort Leavenworth, but you know, whatever the equivalent was, he got a little bit of time. You can't just spout off like that to your chain of command. But it's always interesting when someone tears down an authority that you vest with power over your life. When someone speaks back to a teacher, and you're never heard anyone speak back to a teacher before. When someone speaks back to their parents and you're at their house, you're like, well, if I spoke to my parents like that. I try to speak to my parents as much as equals as possible. I think as an adult you have to, in order to, without being in constant fights. And we learn as adults to have boundaries where we respect each other. And I tell them when they cross boundaries in my life, and then they've laid out boundaries in their life, which I should respect. And then out of those boundaries, we come to this middle ground to have our discussions. But this transcript reminds me about culture, what I didn't like in the college culture and what turned me off about that, and about challenging authority. And then this is another way that when people tell me, oh, you should go to college, it's like I looked through that door enough to open it up and see that I didn't really identify what was going on in there. And I think that if you analyze the whole college industry, it's a big scam. It's an artificial market with these loans that they shovel out the door, where they're basically signature loans for the kids. I feel when it comes down to it, and this is what I determined back then, is that you're indebting future generations in order to invest them into the economy. It's an artificial market supported by the US government. If you care at all about economics or markets, you know that artificial markets that are unhinged from supply and demand effects, when you create such universal support from the US government to back up these loans, and then you make it so the kids can't default on the loans, well, now that's an artificial market. It's not operating by normal market principles of supply and demand. It's artificial, it's subsidized. And so that's a huge reason why the prices are going out of control, because you have an artificial subsidized market, so you don't have any incentive to control costs. This, I feel, is on purpose in order to indebt the kids, because then when you have debt and you have the stress of debt, you're bought into society and you'll cause less. You have less. A lot of people don't protest and don't get involved because of that college debt hanging over people's heads. If you talk to young people, that's one of the main stressors. And then you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. If you don't take on that college debt, then you're stuck with the insecurity of not knowing how to do a job. Not everyone is as brash or confident as me, where you feel like I could always get on the phone and just make money however I want. I can talk my way into the next paycheck. I have a very high tolerance for risk, what I've learned, compared to other people. I've tried to bring other people into real estate, friends and family that I know, and I realize that they don't have my risk tolerance, and they're asking me, when's that next paycheck? And I'm like, you just need, in a week, in 5 weeks, we just need to survive until then, and then we put away our money, and you learn what the flow is. And once you catch your rhythm, and then you have your metrics, as best you can, you plan for the month, but sometimes you don't hit your numbers, and sometimes that's why you have to be able to put away, 3 months, 6 months living expenses to last you until that next deal. And then that's just a mature way of living anyways. Some people need more stability, and they need to know that they're getting a paycheck on the 1st and the 15th, or every 2 weeks, every Friday, or every other Friday. So I've started to have more respect for people who have lower risk tolerance and need more stability, but that's how I think that they're being caught, is they're being entrapped in a system. And then there's a lot of other false incentives in our university system. There's silos of information. I've read a lot online about how the research paper industry, just like the college sports industry, profit incentives aren't benefiting the people who are actually doing the work, and they're benefiting a very small cabal at the top. And then that information is not being shared, and so these silos of information are being sequestered. The dogma is getting to the point that you can just bullshit papers with random word generation, has been proven recently. So there's a lot of things wrong with the university, and I think this was very intuitive of me in order to recognize that early on. And I merely did it through culture and the few people that I was meeting at the time, comparing what I feel good character is compared to the teachers and the interactions I was getting. Sometimes these generalizations are wrong, and I'm always open, and I try to I make judgments and decisions with the information I have. Sometimes I'm rash, and I need to revise them. That's why you have these auditing periods to revise what could be rash judgments. But I think I was spot on college, and a lot of the intuitive things I didn't like back then are being borne out by more evidence the more I learn and hear about how the whole system is going. It's a dying industry which needs reform, and any industry which will be reformed will offer lots of profits to the reformers. So once you introduce a profit motive and people figure out how to do that, just like Uber with transportation, there's going to be a lot of money to be made in university reform, I feel.